I just want you to know that wasn't me. I don't know what happened. There's so much that you need to know.
There you are! You gave us quite a scare, young lady.
If you are a gamer who loves horror games, action games, or survival games, it feels like there's one franchise that you simply can't escape from and keeps showing up in every category. A franchise that continues rising and rising, and every time we say we had enough of it, it keeps proving us wrong with amazing new installments. Long story short, you obviously know by now that the game in question is none other than Resident Evil, and it feels like we can't run away from this game even if we try. I wasn't planning to make a video about it, but a few days ago, I was wandering around the corners of the internet, reading the recent gaming news, and I discovered something very interesting. I find out that Capcom is officially developing 5 new Resident Evil games as we speak, and they're all from different eras and have completely different stories. This is what inspired me to come up with this video. I would love to talk briefly about each of these games, and explain to you their stories and mechanics, in case you haven't played the original versions. I also would like to know your own opinion about which game you are most excited for, and which one you think deserves to be the priority of the developers so it can be the first to be released. If there's 2 words that any Resident Evil fan remembers the most, they have to be Code Veronica. This installment came out more than 20 years ago, and yet it's still popular among gamers to this day, no matter the number of games that followed it. The game takes place 3 months after the horrifying events of Resident Evil 2 and the destruction of Raccoon City. Here, you take on the role of Claire Redfield, searching for her brother Chris, who seems to be working for the Umbrella Corporation on a remote prison island. However, throughout the story, you also play Chris Redfield, who is trying to uncover the secrets of a hidden research facility in Antarctica. But as usual, and just like every Resident Evil game, a new outbreak of the T-virus throws both Claire and Chris into a desperate fight for survival. When it comes to gameplay, Code Veronica is different than its predecessors in multiple aspects. A notable change is that it uses a third-person perspective with dynamic camera angles, which pushes the immersion further and escalates the tension of any stressful situation. The experience also has a deeper focus on resource management, because here you need to manage your items very carefully, solve puzzles, and conserve ammo as much as you can to overcome danger. This means that Code Veronica is a survival horror game to the core, and you can confirm this when you encounter the multiple types of enemies in the playthrough. The game has bizarre creatures and memorable boss fights that will test your skills and courage. And please take the word test seriously, because if you're used to modern Resident Evil games, then you'll most likely misunderstand what I'm talking about. Code Veronica is a game where you're always vulnerable and you need to improvise to make it in one piece, which means that it's different from Resident Evil 4's emphasis on a strong protagonist who can kick enemies in a heartbeat. But if you focus more, you'll notice that Code Veronica's environment and atmosphere are its best qualities. Even though the previous games had a focus on splatterpunk horror, this one incorporates a gothic horror atmosphere where you expect creepy castles, European architecture, and a darker overall tone, making it a game that takes the scary side very seriously. In my opinion, a remake of this installment will probably be the game that overthrows Resident Evil 2 Remake from its reign as the best-selling installment in the history of the franchise. It simply has all the elements for success, and after we saw how Capcom doesn't mess around with remakes, it's obvious that they will make something epic with this one.
Chris Wesker. Go! Chris, since you're one of my best men, I'll let you handle this.
Tell me in the comments below if you agree with this, and whether you believe Code Veronica will be the next Resident Evil game we play or not. When people think about the installment that came out after 5 and 6, Resident Evil 7 comes to mind, and this is simply because Revelations 1 and 2 are always overlooked, and it seems that no one cares to even mention them. The first Revelations game came out in January 2012 before Resident Evil 6, and many people really loved it, but we're going to focus on the second one in this video, which was released in 2015, and it's the last one before the upcoming third installment. Similar to Code Veronica, the story here unfolds through two interwoven narratives, each with its own playable characters. Once again, there's Claire, a familiar face from the franchise, who returns alongside Moira Burton, daughter of Barry Burton. Both of them are abducted, and they wake up in a mysterious prison facility on an island. Barry Burton then decides to search for his daughter Moira after a distressing call from her, and eventually he teams up with Natalia, a young girl with mysterious powers who can sense unseen creatures and monsters. Both teams have to work together to uncover the secrets of the facility, encountering a shadowy organization and a new biological threat that manifests in countless infected entities.
Look out! This one's different!
You probably realized by now that this installment is not like traditional Resident Evil games, and the reason is simply because Revelations 2 was released episodically, which means that it has multiple episodes, and each episode focuses on a specific part of the story. The game also emphasizes cooperative play a lot because each character has unique abilities and weaknesses. Claire is a skilled fighter, while Moira can use a flashlight to stun enemies or reveal hidden items. On the other side, Barry is a powerhouse, while Natalia's special abilities can help players navigate dangers and predict the existence of potential monsters.
Barry, shoot this thing in my way! Barry, this one!
You can also switch between characters during gameplay, solving puzzles and overcoming challenges that require their specific abilities. When it comes to the setting, it's really suitable for a horror experience, because the game is set primarily in a dark and confined prison facility, which creates a tense and claustrophobic atmosphere that makes you always anticipate something to happen. The enemies are primarily infected humans, known as the Afflicted, and they are scary enough to shake your heart if they show up from somewhere. In my opinion, Revelations is an underrated series that gets little appreciation from the franchise's audience. It has its flaws, of course, but I believe this is another reason why Revelations 3 is needed and why it might be something amazing. We don't know who the characters in the third installment will be, but I'm pretty sure we will see some new faces as well as familiar ones. Tell me in the comments what you think about a third installment of this series. Whether you are excited about it, or simply believe it's a weak series and should remain in the past.
A shame about your friend, but you're tougher than he is. You're not gonna snap, are you?
Claire? We lost the girl.
This is definitely the most unavoidable one, because there's no way developers haven't been working on Resident Evil 9 for the last couple of years. It was planned before Village was even released, but to this day the story and setting are still a mystery. Some reports say that it might start from where Village ended, while others say it might not directly continue the same plot. To be honest with you, Village for me was not something very special, and it didn't impress me compared to its predecessor 7. The pacing here can be uneven, with sections feeling rushed or slow depending on the gameplay focus, which makes it harder to get immersed in the story. However, one thing I can't deny about this game is that it contains one of the scariest and most disturbing enemies I have ever encountered in a Resident Evil game. This enemy is obviously the freaking baby, or, to be accurate, the unborn baby creature that shows up out of nowhere and starts chasing you while making the creepiest voice ever. This section is probably one of the most intense moments in horror gaming in general, because hiding from that thing is seriously a pain in the buttocks. I will really love it if Resident Evil 9 includes more creative enemies like this, because it's clear that this is the best way to push the franchise back to its horror roots. Even though details about the story and characters of Resident Evil 9 are scarce, it's actually considered one of Capcom's top priorities when it comes to releases, which means that it will most likely be the next installment we put our hands on. I want to know your opinions on what you want to see in this installment, and please tell me if you want to continue from where Village ended, or if you want a fresh story in another creative setting. Resident Evil Outbreak is a unique entry in the series, and it came out in 2003 on PlayStation 2 and received praise from many gamers at the time. The game takes place during the height of the T-virus outbreak in Raccoon City, roughly concurrent with the events of Resident Evil 2 and 3. You play as one of 8 playable characters, everyday citizens caught in the chaos, and these characters have different backgrounds and skills, offering varied gameplay experiences. This is what makes this installment absolutely special and unrelated to anything we usually see in the franchise. As much as I enjoy playing the roles of Chris and Claire Redfield or Leon S. Kennedy, I always love it when the playable character is a normal human who's trying to stay alive, because it simply intensifies the survival element. Outbreak is not just about a protagonist trying to survive. It's more about different scenarios focusing on a specific group of survivors trying to escape Raccoon City, something you would expect in a real-life disaster.
Yesterday, just before dawn, the Pentagon announced that radioactive waste has been leaked throughout Raccoon City. In accordance with U.S. safety regulations, the city has been placed under quarantine and the Army has been sent in to investigate and control the situation.
Every scenario has its own objectives and locations, from escaping a building overrun by zombies to navigating a research facility beneath the city. The scenarios offer some branching paths and choices, which means that your actions and decisions can affect the outcome of the story for your character. I love it when games add this feature because it makes my playthrough different than yours and vice versa. However, there is something you need to keep in mind here. If your character dies, they are gone for good in that specific scenario, and only other characters can continue. So you basically need to be careful all the time because one mistake means goodbye forever for one person. I can't believe that we're not seeing these insane ideas in modern games. This is what made gaming so much fun back then. It's these simple twists that create the tension and make the challenge worth it. And by the way, I forgot to mention that Outbreak is also an online cooperative game where up to 4 players can work together to survive the zombie hordes if you don't want to play alone. It's actually the first in the series to add this feature. Long story short, Resident Evil Outbreak was a huge success back in the day, and I'm hopeful that a remake will be an even bigger success because everything about it feels ahead of its time, and it can easily catch the interest of modern gamers.
Target is closing in! Alright, come on. The thing's too huge. These 9mm are useless.
Almost got him.
Hold on!
Calm down. You must give me your blood.
After the success of the remakes, and especially after reaching Resident Evil 4, it's obvious for everyone that a remake of Resident Evil 5 is inevitable. Some people even believe it's the one that needs a remake the most, because that's the only way developers can fix the issues in it. The issues that started a decline for the franchise's identity, before it escalated even further with Resident Evil 6. The story here is set several years after the events of Resident Evil 1, and you take on the role of Chris Redfield once again, a familiar face from the franchise. Chris here works for an organization called the BSAA, which specializes in fighting against the global threat of viruses, and as a result, he is sent to a village in West Africa to investigate a potential threat. In this place, he meets a new partner called Sheva, and together, they start their mission of uncovering the hidden agendas behind the scenes and why people here seem suspicious. You can obviously know what happens next, even if you don't play the game. As usual, humans will become infected all over the place, and you need to fight for your survival while trying to figure out who's behind all of this. And speaking of survival, that's actually one of the main issues that some gamers had with this installment. Resident Evil 5 has a stronger focus on action-oriented gameplay than any other game in the series, and this means that you have way more shooting and combat encounters. This literally made it a pure action game, and this is mainly because at that time they wanted to compete with shooter franchises that were selling like crazy. In the entire playthrough, you pretty much never feel vulnerable because you can always defeat any enemy in front of you easily. If you look at Chris here, you'll understand the point even more. The guy is basically a bodybuilder who just finished the Mr. Olympia competition and went to fight some zombies. There's no way you can feel scared when your character looks buff like this. Chris here can easily fight Kratos in a battle and might even win it. The reason people love the survival element in Silent Hill 2 is because James looks like a regular guy you can see in the grocery store every day. He is that everyday man minding his own business, but suddenly finds himself fighting crazy monstrous nurses. I know that Chris is a special agent and all of that stuff, but I believe the remake should make things much tougher for him. We need sequences where escaping is the only option. We need confrontations where Chris has less ammo and must improvise in order to make it out alive. Otherwise, the whole game will simply feel like a third-person Call of Duty game with zombies. Another problem with Resident Evil 5 is the lack of exploration and puzzle solving. Even though the environment looks interesting at first sight, there's not really much that you can explore here, and you won't encounter a puzzle that will keep you scratching your head. The entire playthrough is about you going forward in a straight line, and this is something that proves the point about the action part even more. The same thing with Sheva, by the way. You won't feel vulnerable when you play with her because the game is designed to make you feel like an absolute badass who's hunting the zombies, and not the other way around.
Hold on tight!
This is Captain Stone, Delta Team. I just received word from...
On the good side, however, I find Albert Wesker's role in this game to be an absolute masterclass on what an antagonist should be, and the voice actor for him really performed the role like a charm.
That right is now mine.
Wesker here has the biggest presence compared to any other installment, and he's also more evil than ever. He's psychotic, diabolic, and obsessed with becoming superior to any other creature. I even explained his personality thoroughly in a previous video where I showcased the biggest psychopaths in gaming history and explained why he is a piece of work. Anyway guys, make sure to provide your opinion on a Resident Evil 5 remake in the comments below and what aspects you want improved. I'm personally positive that developers understood the gameplay mistakes and will definitely fix them in a remake, just like they made some changes to 4 as well. They added stealth, which is the most crucial element for increasing tension to the experience and minimizing frequent combat. Even though these 5 games were not officially revealed, and what we know so far is based on high-level leaks, I'm sure that Capcom is developing all of these games for the next few years. The real question is when each one will come out and which one will be first. If we're being honest, it's obvious that Resident Evil 9 is the top priority for the company because they want to deliver something fresh for the audience. And by fresh, I mean it might be something unrelated to any other story in the previous games. Multiple reports and leaks indicate that 9 might go in different directions and start something new away from Village and its characters. And considering how 7 was a successful example of this, I really believe that 9 will be a completely different story and a new adventure that will put us in an unexpected setting. The second game in line will likely be Code Veronica, because Capcom knows very well how much gamers love this installment and want it remade. Capcom is a company that loves giving the audience what they want, and I'm pretty sure they're developing this game as we speak and will probably see the light in the next 2 to 3 years. In my opinion, Revelations 3 and Outbreak might be the last ones in the line, because the remake of Resident Evil 5 is definitely something bigger and more consistent with the plan of the developers, who confirmed publicly that more remakes are coming.
Let's save the chit-chat for later.
I also feel that developers want to fix their past mistakes by reaching Resident Evil 6 as soon as possible, and remaking it in a way that can save it from its notorious reputation. It started a concerning decline for the franchise, and it took a creative experience like Resident Evil 7 to save the show.
You remember the last hurricane? We thought we were lucky, and the next time it rained, there was a mess for sure.
Hello, sister.
Please make sure to explain to me in the comments below which games you want before the others, and which one you believe can break the record of Resident Evil 2 when it comes to sales. Anyway, give this video a like if you loved it, and I'll see you soon.